This is Zachlog the Great, and I am here tonight with my friend Nate.
Yo.
And also with Travis.
Hello.
And we are getting together tonight to discuss the poem My Mind to Me a Kingdom Is by Sir Edward Dyer. And because both of them have elected to be be lazy tonight, I will be the one reading it tonight.
Punting is an option, Sean. Punting is always an option.
You want me to volunteer? Fine, said go spare.
Spare, I tell you.
I should reread some of those before long. Anyway, and as usual, just a reminder, if to anyone watching this, if you like my work, if you'd like to support me, please consider stopping by subscribestar.com/Zachlog-the-great. And it goes all the way down to $1 a month you can sign on for. So, having said that, I will be reading the poem tonight. So let me get a drink and get this up on the screen, and we will, let's see, that's the one. And you guys let me know when that's up.
Yeah, it's up.
Looks good.
Very well. Okay. My Mind to Me a Kingdom Is by Sir Edward Dyer. My mind to me a kingdom is, such present joys that there is no other bliss that earth affords or grows by kind. Though much I want that most would have, yet still my mind forbids to crave. No princely pomp, no wealthy store, no force to win the victory, no wily wit to salve a sore, no shape to feed a loving eye. To none of these I yield as thrall. For why? My mind doth serve for all. I see how plenty surfeits oft, and hasty climbers soon do fall. I see that those which are aloft mishap doth threaten most of all. They get with toil, they keep with fear. Such cares my mind could never bear. Content I live, this is my stay. I seek no more than may suffice. I press to bear no haughty sway. Look, what I lack, my mind supplies. Lo, thus I triumph like a king, content with that my mind doth bring. Some have too much, yet still do crave. I little have, and seek no more. They are but poor, though much they have, and I am rich with little store. They poor, I rich. They beg, I give. They lack, I leave. They pine, I live. I laugh not at another's loss. I grudge not at another's gain. No worldly waves my mind can toss. My state at one doth still remain. I fear no foe, I fawn no friend. I loathe not life, nor dread my end. Some weigh their pleasure by their lust, their wisdom by their rage of will. Their treasure is their only trust, a cloaked craft their store of skill. But all the pleasure that I find is to maintain a quiet mind. My wealth is health and perfect ease, my conscience clear, my chief defense. I neither seek by bribes to please, nor by deceit to breed offense. Thus do I live, thus will I die. Would all did so, as well as I. Okay, so since I was the reader tonight, would one of you care to start off?
Nate wants to.
It is a good sentiment that having got enough, having what you need to be content and to, just allow your contentment to, increase your satisfaction with the thing you have. Don't always be out there looking for the next new thing. Don't always be out there after more, because you can wear yourself out that way. And so, yeah, I agree with what the guy's got to say.
So, two things for me. First, first thing, I would like to thank the Disenchanted Scholar for recommending this poem to me. So that's a blogger who has posted 2 or 3 of my videos at various points, and suggested to me this as a poem to cover sometime. So thank you. I really like this one, and I'm glad you suggested it, because I don't know if I otherwise would have found it. Second thing, overall, this actually reminds me a lot of another poem I had already recorded, haven't yet done a discussion on, which is Ode on Solitude by Alexander Pope. The two seem to me to have a lot in common. So how about you, Travis? What's your first impressions of this?
So I guess I felt kind of the way with Nate. I mean, there's a certain sentiment there that I appreciate. It seems like it takes a while for him to get down to where it starts to make sense to me.
Yeah.
Where he's actually saying, about my health, my wealth is health and perfect ease, which I don't know. Honestly, I had problems with it because it's like my health. Well, your health, your mind is only part of your health. Unfortunately, the body does exist and it has certain requirements, and it can go to pot, and your mind can go to pot too. So the idea of, I don't know. I looked the guy up because I'm like, all right, here's somebody else sitting in an ivory tower writing a poem. And he's a Sir Knighted. He was granted land by this person or that person, and basically never had a challenge in his life to read the short story of his life. I'm sure there were plenty of challenges, but they don't show up in his short bio. Except that the land was taken from him. He didn't like political life, so that kind of fits with the poem of not liking to have to rub shoulders with other people and figure things out. He kind of wants to live in his own mind. I don't know. It sounds nice, and I'm all for trying to find peace in your own mind and in your own life, and trying to find moderation and balance. But to claim that you can find that all in your own mind, it just seems a little far-fetched to me, because we live in the world, and so we have to make real choices in the world that aren't simply the mind.
And that is very true. And I got to admit, the whole the whole first section before he kind of gets down to his thesis sounds a little haughty. It's like all these other chumps.
Yes, I had that feeling too.
Doing stuff with my mind. I was like, yeah, okay, buddy. So I with his thesis, but his development there, I'm like, bud, I think you fall into some of those same traps. You're just sort of you're hitting him from a different direction. But I said, overall, I still agree with the man, because it rings for me with a lot of the stuff that I've come to believe that I'd rather have enough and simplicity and peace, rather than this constant churn of getting and getting and getting. Because the thing, I was having a conversation with my wife a few years ago, because I was sitting around and I was like, what do I do now? Like, all the things that I prayed for, and it's like these are my life goals. This is what I want. I have. I wanted, I wanted a beautiful wife. Got it. Healthy children. I have them. I wanted to have a peaceful home and a good marriage, and I've got all that. Now, what do I set myself toward?
Well,
keeping it would probably be good.
Maintenance is no small thing.
Yeah, exactly.
This is true. But I can do the maintenance, as a matter of course. And I said, I take it very seriously. Okay, everyone. It's not the fairy tale. They lived happily ever after. It's they got to know each other on the regular and worked it out constructively ever after. But like I said, that doesn't diminish the peace of it. It's just that we're both human beings and we have to sometimes reconcile that fact. Cool. But still, what's the next pursuit? I mean, I still haven't generally figured that out. I've been sort of bouncing around.
Well, so I did say I will be recording a poem about Conan the Barbarian for after this one, and so you could take his suggestion and crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentations of their women.
I mean, man, I wouldn't be able to assume they're women. They might just say they are. I don't have any personal enemies. It would be more like the grand political scheme. But see, that right there, getting into all that. I've been told in time that I should because I would make a big splash. I'm like, yeah, you know what else makes a big splash? The debris coming off of a ship after it explodes. I'm like, I don't know, man. That's I enjoy the rhetorical arena, but I don't know if I want to do it professionally. So I don't know about this whole crushing my enemies, driving them before me.
So
limitations of
go ahead,
Travis.
I don't know. I mean, just that idea, just that statement, that you said of Conan. I mean, that is the statement of someone that this poet is talking about. The person who's just all out for glory and taking stuff, and I don't know. And he may even be arguing in this poem. I can't say for sure, but that when you're out conquering the world, you don't have time for self-reflection, basically. Because you're just dealing with the stresses of trying to make that happen.
I haven't finished it, but I've read sections of Pascal's Pensées, which is roughly just thoughts or meditations translated, and he actually says, like, there are enormous parts of human life, enormous parts of what we do with our lives that are just devoted to not having to think about our life, not having to think about what we are and our inevitable destination. It's like keeping ourselves distracted is a huge deal for us, and like you could probably say that's often the driving factor behind a lot of people who who, like Conan, wish to crush their enemies and see them driven before them. And
I think it's a generally human experience.
Yeah,
well, we're all seeking some kind of distraction.
And that's actually kind of exactly the opposite of what Sir Edward Dyer is saying here. He's saying you should cultivate your mind to be such that you're fine being alone with yourself. And he's got a point. I mean, I do understand like why you say there's kind of a sense of kind of arrogance, and I will say particularly I think the last two lines there, thus do I live, thus will I die. Would all did so as well as I. I will say, I think there's two ways you can read that, and depending on whether you think he's being kind of stuck up about this whole thing, because it could be would all did so as well as I do. Like, I'm really great at this. I think other people should be as good at this as I am.
Okay, my inner peace is like the best. Other people's peace, terrible. The worst inner peace. Like, do they have peace or peace? I don't think so. My inner peace is huge.
But I think the other perfectly plausible interpretation, if you want to be a bit more charitable to Sir Dyer, is would all did this. I wish everyone else and me did this. I wish I wasn't one of the few doing this.
That's how those last two lines is. Everything else that goes before it, like they beg island. I'm like, come on.
Well, but at the same time, he says, like, all these people have all this stuff, and yet they're still not satisfied. I don't have that much, and I'm happy. And who's really the
But why
poor
is he
one and the
happy?
rich
He's
one?
happy because he can write poems that puts everyone else down and puts himself up on a pedestal. That's how he achieves it.
So you're saying that he has displaced avarice with pride.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds about right. And I'm not making any strong claims on this, but you just kind of have to fit it in there.
Now, I will say, like, and this is one thing I'm actually doing a little bit, with this channel, with my poetry series in general, like the idea of stalking your mind with things that in a down moment you have something to think about. In a down, like, I've memorized a lot of poems. A few of them have stuck pretty well. And basically in a down moment, power goes out, and my phone isn't charged, and I'm just sitting there. I don't have any light to read a book. I could effectively have a conversation with G.K. Chesterton or with Rudyard Kipling. And I think that's a pretty good practice if you can manage it. Because you do this kind of thing, and your mind, I mean, you do make your mind a kingdom. You make go out and learn, seek out great minds, learn as much as you can from them, and just a little bit of that person is now populating the kingdom of your mind. That's a pretty cool thing. That I've got a little bit of G.K. Chesterton and a little bit of Rudyard Kipling and a little bit of
unless you get too much of Smeagol in there, and then that'd be a good thing.
Well,
that wasn't quite how I was talking about it, but yeah.
No, and I understand. I see what you're saying, Sean. Like, I've read a lot of Robert Frost one time or another. Still my favorite poet. Not necessarily, the manliest poet, but I enjoy his writing. And and as I experience new things, a lot of the stuff I run across, I just get these little, these sort of, these little mental flavors almost of like, yeah, okay, I can taste a bit of Frost in this. This is nice, or this is whatever. And just, I love it. it does enrich your life to have those things.
Yeah, and there's actually a couple of big events of my life have kind of like suddenly called to mind. In one case, a poem I knew pretty well, and in another case, like when my first son was born. Like that day, I looked up Donald Hall's "My Son, My Executioner," and I read it, and I'm like, and I had read it before, and I remembered it, and then I read it that time. I'm like, oh, I get this a lot more now. I understand this a lot more now. And then in another case where someone close to me had died, somewhat not expectedly. I'm not gonna go too much into my personal life, but someone close to me had died, and then there's we did it on this channel. It was Nate and Chris talked about it with me. I think. Oh, what's the one? It's by W.H. Auden, and it's about the Musée des Beaux-Arts, and it's about like him looking at these paintings and how suffering happens, and your suffering happens, and everyone else's life just goes on. And
What was the poem about? For me, it was Tuesday.
Yeah, kind of. Not quite in the aggressive sense, but
Waxwingy there was Icarus was busy crashing into the sea while everybody else was plowing and walking along and doing whatever, and nobody really noticed. They're all just kind of absorbed in their own affairs while poor Daedalus, they're like, oh no, my son, and Icarus is like, hog log.
Yeah, and like shortly after I got that news, I was walking through the grocery store and I was just looking at everyone else around me, and I'm like, how are all of you just going on with your life? This just happened. But it didn't happen to them. And, it's not their fault. There's no reason that 99% of them should care at all. And, I had that poem helped me take grasp of that emotion and understand what was going on. And so, stalking your mind with something that it becomes a kingdom to you, that's pretty cool.
Like I said, I like that what he's aiming for is peace. He's not aiming just to know things. He's not aiming,
right,
to be the best math. He's saying that I want my mind to be at peace. And so I get the feeling he spent a lot of time in self-contemplation. He spent that time alone with his thoughts to go, I know who I am. And I assume he's cultivated himself to be at a point where he is satisfied with who he is. I am not always, to be honest. I mean, I am pretty well at peace with who I am. But there are still things I'm like, yeah, that's not so great, big guy. Maybe do something about that. And so in broad strokes, I agree with what our boy is saying. But at the same time, you got to be careful that it doesn't lull you into complacency. Because there are times when the peaceful man must bestir himself and, do some decidedly unpeaceful things, which is the other half of my maybe I should be out there driving my enemies before me conversation. Because most of the people I would count enemies are worth driving. But, you got to say that.
It just occurred to me that with recent events these days, drive them before me is could perhaps be taken slightly more literally than usual. I haven't been in those situations, but an unfortunate number of people have recently.
Yeah. I just figure find where they're at and, surround them with a bunch of mounted men on horses with cattle prods and just sort of, hey.
Well, Specifically, I was talking about idiot protesters who think they have a right to block public roads out of nowhere. Drive them before you, and hear the lamentations of their things.
Well, you will note that they're not doing that in places where 4x4s are common.
So over the course of this conversation, actually, two different Bible verses. One of which I actually didn't know was a Bible verse. I just remembered the quote, or part of the quote, and then I tried looking it up and found it's a Bible verse. I'm a little bit embarrassed that I didn't remember it was a verse. But 1 Timothy 6:6. Yet true godliness with contentment is great gain. But godliness with contentment is great gain. And, having your life right with God and not desiring, all this material wealth, that is in itself, a very, great, a very strong, a very powerful form of wealth. And, it's not something, and, if it's based on God, then, and it's not something anyone can take from you. I mean, they can take an awful lot from you, but, they can't touch your having set yourself right with him. So
this is true. And the thing about it is that it also talks in the Bible about, one of the heritages of the Christian and of the faithful believer is that when you give yourself to God's will and when you follow that will, you come into what they call the peace that passes understanding. And it is not to say that everything that goes on in your life suddenly is going to be mirror smooth water. There are going to be storms, probably plenty. But the reason the peace passes understanding is because even sometimes you yourself, and especially the people around you, that may not know God, are going to be flabbergasted that you have this peace. That you yourself are not worried to death. You're not, sick with anxiety. You're not, just burning up with stress and worries. You can go through it, not placidly, I would say, but you can go through it with confidence and faith that, hey, Yahweh of the ancient times is on my side. This is his show, and he will do what is best. And there's just a whole bunch of peace in that.
Well, and I said there were two Bible passages that occurred to me, and the other one is one that's quite well known, quite oftenly quoted, but usually kind of badly out of context, which is Philippians 4:13, which in itself it says, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." Which then people are like, "Oh, I can do anything, and I can, and God will be with me, and I can go start this new business, or I can." And it's like, or I can win the NFL Super Bowl, and
it's the NBA championship. You're thinking of Steph Curry,
but
shoes.
That's not what Paul was actually talking about in that, because if you put it in context, it's a little bit different. And he says, I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. And he's like, it's not like I can accomplish all these things. It's that, I've been through a lot. And, if you follow Paul's life story, he's been through a lot, including, significant, violence and personal risk. And, but he doesn't, that's not right. It's not that he doesn't care. It's that kind of like Sir Edward Dyer talks about here, it doesn't touch him deep down, because, as long as I am following Christ, I can go through all of this. I'm not worried about it. And, that's, I think in context, it means rather more than the common shallow abuse of the verse.
Yeah. Well, that just shows that, Paul read his Ecclesiastes, because that is a New Testament summary of the message of Ecclesiastes.
Well, and
I've seen, it says, I've been rich, I've been poor, I've seen everything under the sun, and I know what is good. And the idea is that, whatever's going on, serve God, and also, just do your best to do what you're supposed to do. Ecclesiastes is a great book, and I don't do it justice often enough. But like I said, that's one of those things you got to read if you want to kind of achieve what Mr. Dyer is talking about. Is that, so it can help you understand stuff that, life ain't fair. And there is no there's no absolute prescription that if you do these things, good things happen. Might not work out that way, but that's your best bet. And the thing
Joel Osteen, are you listening?
Joel Osteen read Ecclesiastes, he would catch on fire. But he seems like a nice man, but being a nice man doesn't save you from being a heretic. But anyway, Ecclesiastes, right? It all boils down to, this idea of being simply satisfied. What he says is the keys to a happy life are to, enjoy your work under the sun, love your family, love your friends, eat well, drink a bit, and fear God. And that's what it all boils down to.
I hadn't made this comparison before this conversation, but I just realized this poem, file this next to, what is it? Alexander Pope's Ode on Solitude. By the way, that poem, and I'm stealing a bit from, if we ever eventually discuss that poem was written when Alexander Pope was 12. And people are still talking about it 300 years later. That's how much of a genius Alexander Pope is. When I was 12, I wasn't writing anything that people are going to be talking about 300 years from now.
I heard something when I was 12 that some of my older relatives still talk about, and I wish for the life of me I remembered it, but I don't.
But
Mine's funeral.
Anyway, Alexander Pope's Ode on Solitude, Ecclesiastes, and also another book to consider along with this poem would be the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. Have either of you read that?
No.
It's I highly recommend it. It's a fairly short book, and you can find it in you can get it for free off of Gutenberg, but excuse me, it's what is it? The fascinating thing about it is he didn't really intend it for anyone else. It was kind of just his private logbook of things he was thinking about, and it's kind of considered one of the great texts of the Stoic philosophy. And I mean, he wasn't a Christian, but he definitely got a lot of things right. In fact, there's a passage in there which I don't have immediately to mind, but he's like, remember today that you will deal with idiots and greedy men and men pursuing foolish pleasures and this, and you can't really change them, and you can't really prevent them from doing things that annoy you. All you can do is determine the attitude with which you will deal with these stupid people. And it's like,
or you can drive them before you.
You could crush your enemies, drive them before you, and hear the lamentations of their women.
Yes.
Lamentations is a different book. It's sad.
I mean, Marcus Aurelius was, at the time he wrote this, the emperor of Rome. There are not many more powerful people in history. I mean, like, that's kind of top rank. Like, there are other people at the top rank, but there's not really anyone who's distinctly above that.
United States president since 1930.
But he was saying, like,
hello?
I'm here. Hello?
Yeah. All right. What that reminds me of is Robert Frost. It's like stopping by a wood on a snowy evening. Basically, the gist of it, because I haven't memorized the poem, I just sort of remember the feel of it, is that he's had a crap day. he's just grumbly and irritated, and so he stops for a second, and this crow shakes down a branch full of snow and lands right on his head, and he's like, ugh. And it just makes him laugh and remember that, hey, buddy, the world ain't about you. Things ain't that bad. Just, this is all minor stuff. Get over it and go about your life. And he's like, you know what? Okay. And it says he had saved some part of a day he had rued. And it's like, yep, you know what? We can each of us spend a lot of time ruining our day being like, this is annoying, or that is annoying, or these people frustrate me, or I'm dealing with idiots and greedy brigands. What do I do? But sometimes you have to remember that you can't be so self-centered. Just some stuff happens and you got to sort of duck it, and I'm talking about like go and get out of the way, but just splash, roll off, let that stuff go.
What was the part you quoted? Can you guys hear me, by the way? My mine is showing poor connection.
Yeah, I hear you.
Me all right?
We hear you. We hear you well enough.
Okay. What was the part you quoted? Because I think
it's like the last two lines. I'd quote like the last line. Hold on.
I was going to say, I think you may have gotten it mixed up with another of his poems.
I might have.
Yeah, I think you're running together two of them. Because stopping by the woods on a snowy evening does not mention a crow.
Oh, well, hell.
It's more quiet, reflective than...
But the part you said did sound right. It sounded like something of his, but I didn't know what it was off the top of my head. And now everyone watching us gets to enjoy the spectacle of
dust, snow,
guys looking. What's that?
Dust of snow. The way a crow shook down on me, the dust of snow from a hemlock tree, has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued.
There you go.
Okay, yeah.
So it's 8 lines about get
Yeah,
over. That's the way I've always read.
I haven't yet done one of Robert Frost's poems, partly because I feel like a lot of people already know him. It's not, I don't feel like a lot of the ones I look up, I try and find things that,
One or two
don't get
poems
quite,
by him.
yeah. And so, but it would probably, I'm sure it would be worth finding some of his lesser known poems and covering them. So if there's any favorites of yours, I would definitely be willing to take a recommendation.
Yes. Love and a Question. And what did he call that one about? Or I think it's just called The Messenger. Hang on a minute.
No, I don't think I know that one, or not familiar with that one. That is.
No.
Oh God. I'm sorry. I remember I quoted that part from 1 Timothy, but godliness with contentment is great gain. I was just looking at the context of that part too. And he said, constant friction between people of corrupt mind who have been robbed of the truth and who think that godliness is a means to financial gain. But godliness with contentment is great gain. And I'm just like, oh, hello again, Mr. Osteen.
No, but this one I'm thinking about, this one poem, and let's just veer wildly off the subject. Basically, it says, so it's like the messenger when he was, the bear, that's it, bearer of ill tidings. Says the bearer of ill tidings when he was halfway there reflected that ill tidings were dangerous things to bear. I was like, he just turns off the road and just takes off into the hinterlands, and it talks. It kind of talks about what happens after that. It's just fun.
Which now that reminds me a little bit of a piece from Douglas Adams, one of his Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy books, where someone realized that nothing travels faster than light, except bad news. He said someone once tried to build a spaceship based on this principle, but they found out that wherever they went, it was so depressing they didn't want to be there.
Yeah. So bearer of ill tidings here. Bearer of ill tidings by Robert Frost.
So back to the poem. I'm looking at a couple of lines here. I guess it's the next to last stanza.
Back to the
some way their pleasure by their lust, their wisdom by their rage of will. I think that second line especially, their wisdom is they measure they're measuring their wisdom by their rage of will. And I think we humans do that a lot. The whole
and it's
my rage means that I'm wise and I know what I'm talking about.
I take that because that one is not completely clear on the face of it, and I took that as he was talking about basically people who have the power to impose their will on others. That, like, Marcus Aurelius or the President of the United States, they have the power that if he wants someone to do something, they're probably going to do it because, he has a rather better likelihood than most people of getting someone to do something just because he wants it. But Travis, is that kind of what you were thinking?
No, I mean, I took it in more of a general sense. I mean, I can totally see what you're saying there. I don't know. I think sometimes that we, if it's something that upsets us, we, our rage is kind of the Like, to me, the rage of will is like, I don't know, my will against your, like, thinking that we're wise because this thing angers us. I don't know.
I don't know if they mean emotional rage, but I think they mean like the way I would take that is that they measure their wisdom by their ability to convince people of things. Like they can sway people to their position by force of will, and they consider it wisdom, even when it might just be pedagogy or demagoguery. You know, you're just like, hey,
Sophistry.
I can make people want to follow me, even if, you know, so that means I'm wise. Well, it might just mean you're persuasive. I mean,
Right.
I can
And then-
persuade people of a lot of stupid crap. It doesn't make me wise.
And then this jerk Socrates comes along and just wanders around asking people questions, and then people start to wonder if maybe you're telling them the right thing after all, and then you get him killed, which, you know, all works out.
Well, you know.
By the way, you know, I've already, you know, thrown out a couple of other literature recommendations. I may as well put this one in there as well. The Death of Socrates, also not a long book, also definitely worth reading. I read that when I was in college, just on my own, and it's a very interesting book.
How does it end?
He has a drink.
Or never mind.
So
What refreshing drink?
Is it written as like a novelized version of
No.
his
This
life,
is
or?
this was written by Plato. You know, relatively, you know, close, as far as we know, relatively close to Socrates' actual death. The one I read had a couple of different pieces with it, and one was like, you know, the account of his last speech before his death, and another part was his trial, and you know, roughly how that went, and I think there was probably one more in that, but it's yeah, it's a very interesting read. Like, you know, this guy who, you know, just basically said, I want to know more about the world. And, you know, the first thing I know is that I don't really know much at all. That's the only thing I know. I guess I'll go ask people questions.
Do you know anything? I know a few things. Wrong!
Well, no, it's do you know anything? Oh, yeah, I know all about this. Okay, tell me about it. Uh-huh. Really? Okay, explain that. Okay, explain that some more. And then after, you know, 10 minutes or so, like, holy crap, I don't know anything. Oh, well, let's find out about it. That's pretty much how the dialogues. That's a rough sketch of the dialogues of Socrates.
Well, the issue with that is that at the bottom level, we don't know enough to continue that to a satisfactory conclusion, because no matter what subject you get into, it's going to be like, well, what about that? Dig. What happens now? Oh, hell if I know, buddy. Oh, so we really don't know anything. Right. We have no idea what the foundation. Thank you.
Yes, but acknowledging that is a valuable realization. Acknowledging that, geez, I don't really know that as much as I thought I did. That's a pretty good place to get to.
Yeah. It helps you get out of the Dunning-Kruger Club.
The what club?
The Dunning-Kruger Club, named after the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is basically this idea that people that know very little about something but have, you know, some knowledge will usually assume that they know much, much more about it than they actually do.
And the other part of that is people who actually know quite a bit about a subject tend to underestimate their own skill and knowledge, because they've learned enough to realize that there's still a lot they haven't learned. So very competent people on a particular subject will tend to underestimate their capability, whereas people who have almost no idea what they're talking about tend to be very arrogant on that subject.
Well, my friend was just telling me, or somewhere, I don't remember where I heard it, like, they've done studies, like, almost inevitably across the board, humans think that we know more or are more intelligent. Like, if you, like, we overestimate our actual intelligence. Like, we can ask, they can do general questions like, how smart are you? And then you can go take your IQ. And it's like, we always think we're smarter than we actually are. And it fits in a whole lot of arenas for humans.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think I've covered most of the things I wanted to say about this poem. Nate, any last thoughts for you?
No, I mean, I pretty much hit my two thoughts when I said I generally a guy and he's smarmy.
Travis, how about you? Any last thoughts about this poem or Mr. Dyer?
Yeah, no, I think we're good. I guess this is a thought that I had. I mean, it's all well and good to have a poem like this, but there's no tension brought to life. Like, we don't see him in any tension. We don't see how he's able to maintain this contented, oh, my mind is wonderful, whenever, his lands are being taken away and, his wife's being raped or whatever. Like, which is kind of extreme. But I don't know. It just seems, to me, I get the sentiment and the general idea, but he seems somewhat disconnected from actually living in the real world, which is maybe where some of the swarminess comes from.
So what I hear you saying is he should put the weed down.
Well,
yeah, maybe.
He's no psalmist, right? He's not writing about, on the one hand, I'm hiding out in a cave with my homeboys, and if they find us, they will murder us, and everyone is against us. But I still have faith. He's just saying that, yeah, I'm pretty cool.
Okay. Well, in that case, thank you guys for joining me tonight, and God with you.
Also with you.